Uesugi is an ugly, useless brokey who is ignored by everyone at school until he suddenly becomes a tutor and rizzes up 5 quintuplet sisters at once. However, before that, it's just a normal day for Uesugi at the school cafeteria as he orders his usual meal and walks down to find a seat. Everyone talks about him being the only loner in school because he looks like human waste and smells like an anime convention. Everything changes when he accidentally bumps into the prettiest girl, who wants the same seat he has always sat on during lunch for all his worthless, miserable life. They both decide to sit at the same table, shocking the students that a pretty girl is willing to sit with the school's most disgusting perv. However, the girl soon gets irritated at his lack of table manners as he eats while reading. He tells her he's reviewing his exam papers, so she decides to be nosy, only to discover how smart he is since he received a perfect score. She tells him she's impressed, as she herself is a dummy with the IQ of a donkey. Then she asks him to help her with her studies, but Uesugi declines and walks away, not before mentioning how fat she is for ordering so much food. This comment enrages her, who responds and tells him she has never seen such an insensitive, ugly jerk in all her life. Later that day, Uesugi gets a call from his sister telling him about the debt the family owes and informing him to take a new job opportunity as a tutor for the daughter of a rich family that has recently moved into the neighborhood and has transferred to his school. Or the other option is to pay the debt by selling his kidney, as his existence is useless and he technically doesn't need both of them anyway. The next day, the newly transferred student is introduced to the class, and surprise, surprise, it's Itsuki. Of course, our MC immediately realizes it's the girl from yesterday's cafeteria incident. He tries to get on her good side, because his broke family needs the money, but she gives him the cold shoulder for being a jerk the day before. Later, he tries to sit with her at the cafeteria, but realizes the seats around her are already occupied. Just then, one of the random girls seated at Itsuki's table, who has noticeably massive cannons, approaches him and asks if he is interested in Itsuki. But our MC has too much pride and apparently has the reputation of being the loneliest numbskull to uphold, so he tells her he has no interest in receiving her help. She slaps his useless head and tells him he doesn't need to act all manly, then introduces herself as Ichika before seating herself back at the table. Of course, our MC doesn't stop getting bothered that easily. A different girl from that same table approaches him while he sulks alone eating his lunch and presents him with 2 graded exam papers. One has full marks, which is obviously his, and the other has an amazing score of 0, which we find out is hers. She claims he dropped his exam paper while passing the table earlier, and after he takes both of them for no apparent reason, she follows him everywhere, even to the boys' locker room. He gets fed up and gives her back her exam paper, saying they're even now, and she, being the idiot who managed to get a fat 0 on an exam, says thank you and finally leaves the poor guy alone. After school, our MC tries to find a moment where Itsuki is alone so he can apologize, but the same girls she sat with at the cafeteria table are still hovering. As he creepily stalks them, one of the girls takes notice of him, and in a very monotone emo voice, claims she's going to report him. He asks her not to, and to also keep this a secret from her friend Itsuki. She agrees, but she also notes that Itsuki is apparently not her friend, which is obviously very strange considering the circumstances. He then heads for the tutoring job, and upon getting there, he realizes Itsuki's parents must be pretty damn rich, as they live in an extremely lavish building. As he attempts to enter the building, he stumbles upon 2 girls wearing his school's uniform. One is the monotone emo chick from earlier, and the other is completely random. They accuse him of being a homeless stalker. Uesugi, trying to get rid of them as quickly as possible, tells them he lives in this building too. Upon realizing the evil girls are bent on crushing his dream of earning money from tutoring, he decides to make a run for it and manages to get inside. He just barely misses Itsuki as she enters the elevator, so he climbs 30 flights of stairs. After that exhausting effort, he finds her and tries apologizing, but she tells him to jump off a cliff as she has a tutor coming soon. Uesugi then informs her he is the tutor, but she says hell no. as he is too dense and insensitive to tutor even a goat. He walks closer and insists, and as she is in disbelief, saying she can't believe he is going to tutor them, he's confused. What does she mean, them? Just then, all 4 of the weird girls he encountered earlier that day emerge from the elevator, and he wonders what they're doing there and thinks they look like a low-budget female Power Ranger squad. Itsuki then points out to him that they all live in the same apartment as quintuplets, which equally shocks and excites him. Inside the apartment, Uesugi wonders why none of the girls come out for tutoring. Just then, the 0% Yotsuba approaches him and tells him she's ready for tutoring, and that they need to get the rest of the team to start the harem plot. They go to Itsuki's room, but she refuses to accept him as her tutor and slams the door in his face. They knock on emo girl Miku's door, who gives him the same words of rejection. Then they knock on Nino's door, but she doesn't answer. Finally, they visit Ichika's room, and as they enter, he finds her lying on the bed under the covers, and Uesugi is shocked at the insane mess she calls her room. He attempts to force her to join their tutoring session and pulls the covers off of her and accidentally unveils her naked body, which stuns him equally as much as her disgusting room. He immediately leaves and is confronted by emo girl Miku, who tells him she's looking for her sweatshirt, which went missing when he entered the house. Just as he begins to deny these accusations, they see Nino wearing it. A few minutes later, the girls are all seated and stuffing their faces, and Uesugi feels it's the perfect time to commence tutoring. But they bicker, which makes him think they're completely hopeless, and has no idea how he'll succeed in helping these idiots graduate. Nino then offers Uesugi homemade cookies she baked, claiming she will accept tutoring if he tries some. Then she offers him water, which turns out to have definitely been spiked with something. He suddenly finds himself in the back seat of a taxi, and the taxi driver tells him he brought him home and that his charge is nearly 5,000 yen, which shocks the living daylights out of him, as he is a brokey with a load of debts. Then Itsuki, who was apparently there the whole time, gives the driver her card and pays the fee. She tells him to give up on his dream of being their tutor, but our MC persists. At that moment, his young, adorable sister, Raiha, comes running, welcoming him, and then pushes him to the side upon seeing pretty girl Itsuki, so she invites her inside for dinner. While they eat, Raiha asks him if their tutoring session was a success, and he lies, so his sister won't think he's a loser. Unfortunately, Raiha has no filter, and exposes their financial situation in front of Itsuki. Later, as Uesugi walks Itsuki to her cab, she hesitatingly agrees to his tutoring because of his family's predicament. This excites Uesugi as he finally finds his life's purpose, to help all 5 of them graduate. He will do so by concentrating only on the girls who are at risk for failing, which, unbeknownst to him, is all of them. The following day, Uesugi arrives at the girls' residence and asks them to prove they don't really need the services of a tutor. He gives them a test and promises to never disturb or talk to anyone who passes. Itsuki agrees, confident she'll pass, and would rather not have to see his ugly face ever again, and the others follow suit. Uesugi instructs them that a score of 50 is passing, so the test commences, and after a few minutes, Uesugi announces that they scored 100, which excites them until he reveals that their combined score is 100. The next day at school, the girls inform him that they can study independently and don't need his help. He gives them a question from the test they did before, which they can't answer. Realizing the girls hate 2 things, studying and being around him, he decides to win their trust. While reviewing their test scores, he discovers that Miku got the answer to the question right. Later that day, at the cafeteria, he approaches her and asks why she didn't answer the question he asked earlier. He's interrupted by Yotsuba and Ichika, who tell him they would rather spend their youthful years enjoying life and falling in love rather than studying. Upon hearing these words, Uesugi gets infuriated and tells them love is for the foolish and weak. This makes the girls realize he is a complete imbecile who is hopelessly lost and was clearly never loved by his parents. Miku's face turns tomato red as they talk about love, which made her sisters conclude she might have a crush. Meanwhile, in class, our MC finds a letter from Miku asking to meet on the rooftop after school, making him believe that he might be Miku's crush. After school, he goes to the rooftop to meet his new supposed love interest, and as she approaches, his heart beats like crazy when he realizes this might actually be a love confession. But he's slapped back to reality when all she tells him is the answer to the question he asked earlier. After being the most anticlimactic love confession ever, she begins leaving, but our MC makes her drop her phone and then exposes her major interest in ancient warlords. Definitely one of the craziest fetishes I've ever heard of. Our MC sees this as an opportunity to convince Miku into joining his tutoring lessons and tells her he scored perfectly on his Japanese history exam, so he could definitely teach her all about the warlords. She tests his knowledge and discovers he does in fact know a thing or two, so she agrees to be tutored by him. However, as they walk down from the rooftop, she asks him a trick question, but he fails to prove his worth. She then tells him he's all talk and has nothing to offer. Determined to prove himself, he borrows all the books he can find on Japanese history and warlords. Feeling more confident now that he's read so many books, 2 days later he approaches Miku ready to answer all her questions. Unfortunately, she tricks his dumbass again and runs away. While running after her, he bumps into Miku, who is terribly disguised as Yotsuba, but not terribly enough since our MC falls for it, and asks if she has seen Miku. He follows her guidance and then coincidentally bumps into the real Yotsuba, realizing he's been played like a useless toy. He continues chasing the real Miku until they both become completely exhausted. Following this, Miku confides that she doesn't want her sisters to know about her interest in ancient warlords and Japanese history because she sees herself as the biggest loser among them. However, Uesugi tells her she's actually the brightest among the sisters, and even scored the highest on the test. She insists that anything she can do, her sisters can do too, simply because they're quintuplets. This inspires Uesugi, who promises to help all 5 of them graduate together with smiles on their faces, as he can finally see hope at the end of the tunnel, and their future isn't as useless as she thinks. The following day, Uesugi is locked out from gaining entry into the girls' apartment. Fortunately, Miku is also walking in and wonders what cave our MC crept out of since he doesn't know the first thing about modern technology. Meanwhile, inside the house, 4 of the girls gather for tutoring and Nino interrupts with the evil intention of disrupting their lesson. Nino tells Yotsuba about a basketball team looking for someone to fill in, knowing she can't resist the urge to help people in need. So, Yotsuba scrambles to leave. Nino then reminds Ichika about work, prompting her to also abandon the lesson. She suggests Itsuki read in a quiet place, making her leave to go study elsewhere. Everyone leaves except Miku, so Nino tries to use the same trick on her, but Miku proves stubborn. Then, Nino tries using the oldest trick in the book by attacking Miku's self-esteem, bringing in a whole conversation about inner and outer beauty, but even that proves useless. However, Miku's stomach growls, and Nino suggests the 2 sisters compete to see who has the most inner beauty through a cooking battle. After they make their individual meals, our MC is asked to determine which is better. Being broke and having no idea what good tasting food even is, he determines both are equally good, which makes Miku very happy and Nino extremely pissed. Later on, Uesugi confides in Miku, telling her Nino hates him and they'll never be on good terms. Miku, however, believes otherwise and is sure he will find a way to make Nino accept him. As he exits their building to head home, he realizes he forgot his flashcards in their apartment, but the doors lock behind him due to the building's automatic locking system. So he calls their room number and Miku answers, telling him she's heading into the shower, and he's free to come right up and take them. He enters their apartment and stumbles upon Nino, who is almost completely nude, and mistakes her as Miku at first. Nino apparently is nearly blind because she assumes the person in the room with her is Miku, not our pervy MC. She accidentally knocks her hands against a cabinet door after pushing her cannons on our MC's back, and several books nearly crush her, but Uesugi dives in just in time and saves her. Of course, at that moment, Nino becomes painfully aware that it is in fact a guy who is on top of her, not one of her sisters. Suddenly, Itsuki walks in and catches them in the sus position and decides to take a photo to commemorate the embarrassing moment. The girls gather to judge the situation as sexual harassment, and Itsuki suggests he be barred permanently from entering the apartment, but Miku defends him. Nino complains that Uesugi saw her naked, but Miku tells her there's proof it was an accident. Nino continues to complain that he threw himself at her, and when our MC thinks he will be losing his tutoring job, Itsuki comes to his rescue and explains that he had probably saved her from the falling books, which can be seen in the picture she took. At that moment, Nino breaks down in tears and runs out of the apartment. Soon after, on his way home, Uesugi stumbles upon Nino waiting outside the apartment complex's main door. And when she sees him, she tries running inside to avoid him, but the auto lock of the building is activated. Without her card, she can't get in. So she's left stranded outside, and with Uesugi not wanting to leave her alone, he decides to stay with her, and they talk. Uesugi tells her he figured out why she hates him, because she's protective of her sisters, and it's something he can understand. After this heartwarming exchange, Nino finally accepts him a little more, and heads inside with Miku. Several days later, Uesugi gets a day off from tutoring and decides to spend the whole day studying. Of course, the universe has other plans. The doorbell rings, and when he answers, he finds Itsuki, who has come to give him his pay for the past 2 days of tutoring. Looking at the money, which is quite a lot, his younger sister prays to their mom and dad, saying that Uesugi has finally made it in life. He initially rejects it, feeling like he hasn't done enough to deserve such a large amount of money. However, Itsuki tells him that his presence has begun to change something in the sisters, and that's more than enough, so he should accept the money and spend it on whatever he likes. So, after eventually accepting the money, our MC asks Raiha, his adorable little sister, what she wants. Raiha takes them to an arcade, which she's always only ever dreamed of. Uesugi tells Itsuki that Raiha has been having difficulty in life because of his family's predicament, so he wants to give her all she desires. He spends the whole day with Itsuki and Raiha, hoping that by the evening he can have some time for studying. Unfortunately, just as Itsuki is about to part ways with them, her other sisters arrive, dressed in kimonos, and tell him they're going to see the fireworks. However, Uesugi informs them they're not going anywhere until they finish their homework. They all hesitantly complete their homework and then head to the festival. At the festival, while he sits and observes, Itsuki approaches our MC and tells him to smile and enjoy his time. He responds by telling her that he is finding it difficult to differentiate the sisters and suggests she should stop changing her hairstyle so frequently so he can more easily identify them. This remark makes her angry, so Ichika intervenes and tells him he should try complimenting a girl when she changes her hairstyle instead. Later, Miku informs him that Nino has rented the rooftop of a shop near the festival so they can watch the fireworks together. This shocks him as it seems an extravagant expense even for the Elon Musk daughters. Later on, as they walk through the festival grounds, Uesugi wonders what is so special about the fireworks that they would go so far as to rent the rooftop to get a good view. Nino tells him that fireworks are a big part of the memories they shared with their mother, who loved fireworks, so they all went together to see them yearly. Just then, an announcement is made that the fireworks are about to commence. Nino looks around and can't find any of the other sisters, and just as she's about to get lost in the crowd, Uesugi grabs her hand and tells her to hold on tight and take him to the shop they rented to see the fireworks. Just as they get to the rooftop, the fireworks start, and they view them together. Our idiot MC thinks it's the perfect time to give a boring lecture about the history of fireworks, but she tells him to shut the hell up. In the hopes of rounding up all the sisters before the hour is up, she attempts to call them, and Yotsuba tells her she and Raiha are at the watchtower. Just then, they spot Ichika in the crowd. Uesugi tells Nino to wait for him while he goes to round everyone up. As he tries to grab Ichika's hand, an ugly old dude with a mustache stops him and asks Uesugi what his relationship is with Ichika. At that moment, Uesugi thinks about a million responses, but before he can even say anything, the man and Ichika are already gone. Miku then approaches him, telling him to follow her to get Ichika, but then complains that someone stepped on her foot, so Uesugi offers to carry her on his back. As her soft pillows press against his back, he enjoys every bit of the heavenly experience, but he soon has to put her down because he's a weakling who can barely lift his own weight. He helps her bandage her wounded foot so she can walk, but she gets angry at his earlier comment that she was too heavy. They sit on the stairs, and Uesugi tells her about the mustached man who left with Ichika, Then Miku reveals that she's seen Ichika getting out of that guy's car before, making Uesugi wonder what is happening between her and this strange man. With 40 minutes left before the fireworks end, he decides to look for the others, but then bumps into two weirdos who ask if he and Miku are a couple because they're holding hands. He tells them she's just an acquaintance, but Miku said they were friends. This discrepancy between their answers upsets Miku for a moment, but she doesn't dwell on it too much. Just then, they spot Itsuki, so Uesugi runs after her and calls her name, and she's not too happy about seeing his ugly face. He tells her Miku is waiting close by and they need to meet up with her. As they walk, he asks her what their relationship is, since it's been a question that's come up a few times now and he genuinely doesn't know the right answer. Itsuki tells him he is just a stranger to her, but she also passively suggests he should already know the answer to that question. Suddenly, Ichika grabs him and urges him to come with her and takes him to a secluded alley. She warns him not to tell anyone about what happened with the mustached man earlier. She leans forward and glares at him, saying she can't watch the fireworks with them. What is Ichika hiding from everyone? And who the heck is this mustache guy? If you loved this recap and want the next part, comment part 2. Also, like this video and subscribe to this channel for more interesting anime recaps. See you in the next one!